So welcome back, kings and queens, and welcome if you're new here. My name is Hope King, and I'm the designer behind King's Designs MD. Today, I'm going to show you how I embroider my pot holders. Believe it or not, pot holders have been a pretty good seller for my shop. Over the past year, I had some personalized pot holders where I will put the name on them, and then I also had the monogram pot holders. So today I will be doing a set of monogram pot holders, and I'm going to try to show you guys how I packaged them. I had to think for a second how I packaged them to go out. So stay tuned. Okay, so I hope you can see what I'm doing. I am in my combined design, and I got here by just clicking File, and Add Design. Once I click that, it allows me to go to my file folders and choose from what I want to choose from. I know today I'm using a curly font, and I need it to fit in my 4x4 hoop size. I tried the 3.5 and it was too big. And what happens is the curly font has the little curly cues on it. So sometimes when you add it, it expands beyond, I think the 3.83, I think is what a 4x4 hoop size actually gets you in spacing. So it goes a little beyond that sizing, which means I have to kick it down to the next size. So let me find the correct size and I'll be back. So I am taking it down to a 3, and I'm going to use an uppercase M, and you will see what I'm talking about in terms of, see the curly cues here and over here, which is taking it down in the sizing. But with combined design, you can set it to your hoop size, so it'll show you what it will look like on that hoop size. So this is what a 4x4 hoop size is going to look like. Now I'm going to save this to my file, and then I need to upload it to my embroidery machine. Now I have my machine hooked up, and I'm sending my file over. And you should see it here. Trying to make sure you can see when it goes over. Sorry. Okay, so I am hoping this will let you see it now. I was hoping you'll actually get to see the process. But anyway, it's kind of like uploading a USB drive when you send it over. Usually says something like transferring. So since it's already done, what I want to show you is I just touch that, hit that, and it stores it into my machine. When it sits in that first area, it's like a temporary holding space. So if I were to turn my machine off and on, it would turn off as well. This lets me know about how long it's going to take to stitch out based on the size. And now anything I have stored will be over here, and these are the only two things. Now this is something I did a while ago, so I can go here and I can delete that out, and so now that's the only thing stored in my machine. I typically don't store a whole lot of stuff in my machine. You hear me unplugging things, so it does make a noise on my computer when I plug my USB cord in to transfer things over when I take it out. I typically don't store a whole lot of things on my machine. This machine only holds so much. So when I'm done deleting something, I take it out. I do have a file in my computer system that is specifically for my embroidery. Something like this, I should be able to transfer directly from my computer file to here, But since I use combined design, I do have a specific file labeled combined design that any designs I'm doing, I keep in there at least for a period of time and transform over that way. It's just something that I started doing because I was putting names together and saving them that way. So even when I was doing an initial, I would just continue to do it that way. So it's kind of just habit for me now. The good part about it is I can always come back to it. Now you may be able to see it, but one of the things that is different about my embroidery machine versus my sewing machine is, oh, I missed something here. I knew something wasn't right. So I'm going to have to cut this off and come back. But one of the things I was trying to show you is that my embroidery machine versus my sewing machine, I don't have to use a foot pedal. So I was trying to show you over here with one hand, and I'm over here missing steps. That you don't have to have a foot pedal for that. Okay, so I'm going to try this again. So the top of my machine is on, is clicked over. Typically, if you do this for winding a bobbin on the sewing machine, there's a presser foot, and you have to press the presser foot to get it going. On my embroidery machine, okay, come on, be great. You hit the button and it does it for you. So I'm going to let this continue to wind, and I'll be back. Okay, so once it's done, I drop that in my casing, bring it forward, around, and back. And there's a thread cutter. I'm trying to work around my camera. And then I pop that on. Now, my machine was covered and it's still dusty. So, next step. So if you've done embroidery, you know you need some type of stabilizer. This is the back of my hoop, and I'm just going to pop that on. My machine is older. I have had this for probably 6+ years. It is a Brother PE 500. But it still works, and I'm gonna work it. So these are my needles, and if you've seen me talk about embroidery before, you know that I like to bend my needles. Again, much like other things, that's a personal preference for me. So I'm going to what I call float, or what they call float, which means my stuff is just sitting on top, but I'm going to put my needles through and then I'll be back. My pins through rather, and then I'll be back. If you can see, I have about 4 pins in. That's typically what I use on my machine or when I'm embroidering. I'm going to pop this on my machine. I don't know how much you'll be able to see. Let me get that under. Kind of do this and look at the same time. Look at the camera and look at the machine at the same time. So I'm popping it in, and there we go. So it's now on my machine. And let's see what we got here. So I'm up here. I typically like, oh shoot, you can't see any of that. So when I go here, oh, come on. I'm hitting my button. I like to go to my adjust screen. That's where you can see the layout. And so it shows you where it's going to be on the screen and how it will basically stitch out over here. So I'm going to lower my foot. I'm going to hit my button and let the machine do the work. Now, one of the things you always have to be mindful of your starting stitches, and you also have to be mindful of your pins if you're floating. You don't want your machine to hit your pins, just like when you're sewing. Now, again, my machine is older. It is pretty loud. There are newer, quieter, and really more expensive machines. I probably paid about $300 for my machine 6 years ago. With everything going up in the last 2 years, machines have almost doubled in price for just even a basic sewing machine. So I am going to use this as long as I can. I had considered getting another machine just as a secondary machine, but again, I'm going to continue to use this one for now. Now, if you saw it earlier, I have my serger behind me. That's one of my least favorite machines, and I don't use it. If you saw it, I use my serger as a cone holder, and it actually holds my big cones of embroidery thread, so I use that to run it to my embroidery machine. One of the setbacks of having a smaller machine is that I only have a single needle, which means one needle, and so I don't have the color changing options. I have to do that manually. Also, the bigger machines are faster than my machine. But I would encourage people, if you have not tried embroidery and if you don't know if you're going to like embroidery, you might want to start with something smaller. So I was saying you might want to start with something smaller. After a while, when you're using your machine, you can hear noises and different things, and you start to know things to look out for. Now, my machine was perfectly fine until I started talking bad about her, so I'm going to be quiet. But yeah, I would encourage people to start out with a smaller machine if you don't know about embroidery, or if you have, a small budget. Some people don't have $5,000 and $6,000 to start with a machine, and there's a whole lot of people that start with machines and find out they don't like the hobby, they don't like the business. So if you can test out machines or start with something small, I always encourage that. Most people will tell you to get at least a 5x7. The 4x4 is good if you're doing small items and like baby items. You can get things like a repositional hoop where you can move things around, but it is a lot more manual labor to be able to do those things, but it can be done. So this is what I love about embroidery. Those satin stitches, it's just therapeutic for me.